As the leader of the Sons of Caledon and the current reigning overlord, we all love our adorable Caesar. But a lot has changed since her release, and while she can still be a worthwhile unit for some of us, depending on our preferences in the endgame, she also doesn't live up to many of today's standards. Hence, today I want to talk about her pros, her shortcomings, and whether or not she is still worth it for you given the upcoming rerun. I also know this video will largely be inherently negative due to the topic at hand, but I also don't think that it is fair to bait less knowledgeable players into pulling for her because a thumbnail says she is insane. But I am also not here to sugarcoat her just because she is your favorite unit or helps you clear floor 999 in the tower. And also, if you are a Battle Tower player or mainly care about getting all of the polychrome rewards, this video does not apply to you. And neither does it if you simply like her. With that said, let's talk about Caesar King. Caesar is a physical defense unit who excels at providing a shield and a 1000 attack buff to the current active on-field unit, while also helping out with some comfort by giving increased interrupt resistance. Unfortunately, this is kind of where the problems begin. As a defense unit, Caesar got pretty shafted over the last year by not having many free-to-play available weapon options. At least up until patch 2.0, where at least she now has the reel available. Although I guess you always just could have used fossilized core in the first place. While her signature is actually pretty good and can help you hit 3 stuns for example in a Yejuan, Panyoho and Astra team due to the additional team-wide days buff, pulling for her signature to use it on Panyoho instead of pulling for her does not necessarily speak in favor of Caesar. This comes down to a few problems, and one of them is that defense units are, as of right now, support units but with no real identity and a little bit more days instead. They are supposed to provide survivability, which to be fair, they do, and buffs, which they do too, but sadly outside of Caesar's signature, their weapons really don't. Essentially, this can be boiled down to defense units competing with support units in the same slot. But not only do most support units provide better buffs, they also have access to many great weapon options which further enhance their buffing capabilities. Within the last year, we not only had much more off-field units released, and I am using the term off-field here very loosely, you will see later on why that is, but quick swaps and animation cancels also got much more prominent. This is especially apparent in units such as Evelyn or Miyabi. Unfortunately, Caesar mainly buffs the current active on-field unit, and while Evelyn's optimal playstyle wants her to be switched out during her chain attack, if we were to do so, she would lose Caesar's attack buff and hence also a lot of damage. This does not only apply to Evelyn however. Vivian, Bernice, Trigger, Jufufu and Miyabi are just some other examples here. All of these units do not really profit much or basically at all of Caesar's attack buff. Either they are mostly inactive or off-field regardless, or they are switched out during their most prominent attack. With many other supports being able to buff the entire team instead, even characters like Lucy can sometimes come out ahead in these teams simply by effectively giving the buffs to 2 units instead of only 1 unit. That is not even including the possible buffs from the weapons they have access to as well. Support units have access to weapons such as Kaboom or even Unfettered Game Ball after all, whereas defense units have Caesar's signature I guess. And speaking of active, inactive and off-field characters already, let's also quickly talk about it. Big thanks and credits to Leafa here who compiled this information. She is the true GOAT behind finding out how game mechanics work, so please check her out, a link is in the description. Let's clarify the terminology first. The active character is the currently controlled agent present on the field, whereas an inactive agent is present on the field but not controlled by the user. An example for an inactive agent would be Trigger. Off-field agents are completely missing from the field and are also not being controlled by the user. An example here being Bernice. Essentially, if you can see them on field, they are inactive and not off-field. If your character is active, but frequently swap cancelled, such as Miyabi or Evelyn, inactive most of the time, such as Trigger, Vivian or Jufufu, or off-field, such as Bernice. In all cases, you will lose the 1000 attack buff from Caesar, which essentially leaves the only benefit she brings to the team, a 25% damage bonus from her additional core passive. Make it 45% if you have her signature. And that simply brings up the question to me, how good Caesar will be for future characters, given how we are slowly getting more and more agents which act passively in the background instead of being played actively on field. But she also has some positive sides, so let's talk about where she is actually really good at. Caesar does provide a damage absorbing shield after all, and interrupt resistance to the shielded active unit, and some characters such as Soldier 0 MB can actually really appreciate that. Not only that, the shield itself can effectively absorb infinite damage from a single damage instance. Even if you would get hit for a theoretical 1 trillion damage, you will take 0. The shield will absorb it all and effectively prevents one-shots. This makes Caesar a very good unit for lower skilled players, for example for the Battle Tower. With her EX special cost being effectively 20 after an assist follow-up, she is also very good at refreshing the shield. On a side note here, if you are after the Demon Lord medal, Caesar's shield will not actually help you with that. Getting hit is still getting hit after all, even if you didn't take damage. Furthermore, Caesar can function as an effective filler in effectively any team. While she is not necessarily great, she also is not the worst, which kind of is the problem. She isn't great, and her greatest strength is probably the interrupt resistance her shield provides, which also is slowly becoming simply less and less relevant. Many of the new units come with an insane amount of iframes, Miyabi and Yijuan being prime example of units who are essentially invulnerable half of the time. For these units, the shield becomes essentially a permanent 1000 attack buff which never expires, but all of the other benefits, such as basically fixing your skill issues, are simply lost. And the units who could actually profit from the shield and interrupt resistance, mainly Soldier 0 MB and Jane coming to mind, are also units who highly encourage and reward dodging, and hence you would not profit of the actual shield and interrupt resistance in the first place if you play these characters correctly, because you don't get hit. That brings us to the second to last point. The shield fixes skill issues. It allows you to get hit without having to interrupt your current attack. The problem becomes if this is a recurring occurrence. The entire attack buff is bound to the shield after all. If you get hit too often and the shield is used up, you also lose the attack buff. And this is just my personal opinion here, but while this is not a problem if you only get hit once in a while, it is somewhat of a counterintuitive mechanic. You kind of want to get hit because otherwise the shield and interrupt resistance have no purpose, but you also kinda don't, because if the shield is used up, you will lose the buff. Lastly, defense units have no fantastic sets to use. You are forced to either use Astral Voice, Swing Jazz or Protopunk. Astral Voice is usually already in use by a support and the effect does not stack. Swing Jazz is a valid option, but requires you to use chain attacks on Caesar, which is probably not the greatest idea. And lastly, we have Protopunk. The 2-piece effect of Protopunk is completely useless, and yes, I know it increases the shield value, but you don't want to get hit in the first place, so it doesn't do anything. And to be fair, the 4-piece effect is great, except that it only lasts for 10 seconds. Including stun recalculations, the average stun window lasts for approximately 15 seconds, and Protopunk requires a defensive or evasive assist, which you cannot perform during the stun window. Which means we have to force this assist right before the stun window, which is rarely ever actually feasible. This often results in Protopunk's buff expiring right in the middle of the stun window, or potentially even earlier. While Swing Jazz is probably her best generic option, the only set which Caesar can effectively make real good use of is Freedom Blues, which is only really useful with Piper, Jane and maybe Alice coming up. But not only does Freedom's debuff only last for 8 seconds, which leads to an inherent downtime of the set for her as well, Yuzua is very likely to take the place as the best support for exactly those teams. With all of that in mind, let's talk about whether or not Caesar is worth it for you. Obviously, none of this takes into account how much you like a character, and I would always recommend you to pull for waifu over meta. Again, this is purely from a meta perspective of Deadly Assault and partially Shio defense, and also not from the battle tower. At this point, it is probably a good idea to summarize her pros and cons to have a better overview on when she is a good pull and when she isn't. Caesar is very splashable and can fit into essentially any team. She provides a shield and interrupt resistance to the active on-field character and can help massively with skill issues. This shield also comes with a 1000 attack buff, but this buff is only active for the current on-field character. Many DPS will lose this buff during the strongest attack due to swap cancelling, and anomaly teams are mainly played as disorder compositions nowadays, which means 1 out of your 2 DPS characters go mostly unbuffed. Caesar provides a reduced assist point consumption for parries, but so does Corrin, or Sukaku, or Piper, and many others for that matter. Caesar has no good free-to-play weapon options, but her signature is pretty good. Not only on her, but on like every defense unit. She is very good in the battle tower if your goal is to get as high as possible, but she will not necessarily help you obtain the Demon Lord badge, and she is outclassed by most other supports and stunners in Deadly Assault and Shio defense. For the latter, however, her dead and basic attack can at least help with grouping enemies. I know this video has been mainly negative about her. I love her as much as you do, but she is unfortunately just not that great anymore. Is she bad? No, she isn't. She just isn't great. But with many other great options available, if you care about investing your pulls into strong, meta-relevant characters, she might not be worth it for you. If you really like her or the Panda though, at least her signature can be worth a look at. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. If you are looking for more Zenless Zone Zero content, don't forget to like and subscribe. I wish you all a great day and good luck on your pulls. Peace.